Welcome, retoolers from around the world to our new Builder Talk series. I'm Taylor Singletary, and I work as part of the Retool Developer Relations team. And while many retool enthusiasts are soloists or are working as part of a team using retool to support a single business, some of our most active community members work for or run their own consultancy practices for enabling great software for any business. If you've spent any time in our community forum, you'll certainly have witnessed Miguel Ortiz answering questions with care, authority, ingenuity, and maybe even some selflessness. Miguel's business, BuildReallyFast.com, is a retool agency partner, and he's built, well, we'll get to know how many apps and integrations he's built in a minute, but rest assured, Miguel has spent more time in retool than most. Before we get to the Q&A section of our time together today, we asked Miguel to show us how he retools in a pre-recorded video. Please cue the video, Daniel.
Hi, I am Miguel Ortiz, and I am going to show you how I retool. All right, first of all, my hardware. I find it really difficult to retool without having a big screen next to my laptop because you have the right panel here with all of the queries, the right panel here left, and the right panel here with all of the settings for the components and other things, and then the queries, which I like to have here in the bottom. If you have all of this in a laptop, this becomes really, really small, and moving components is just very tough. So I need a big screen, which I have right here in front of me on my laptop. And ideally, I would have another one here on the left for my LLMs, but it's not always possible. So that's my hard. Now, how do I structure my workflow? As you can see, I use Chrome. I'm a Windows user, and I use Chrome, and I love dividing my tabs in these group tabs that Chrome offers. So I have LLMs here, although I have slowly start moving into the desktop apps for Claude, which I'm now using more and more, although I can say that ChatGPT is still my favorite. I have databases, which I have the Retool one. I have different other ones. I love Supabase. It's easier for me to find them here, although it depends if I have different clients I'm working on. Workflows so that I can find them as well, and then different projects I may be working on. This is the way I like it. If ideally, I would be able to rename these tabs as well so that I can easily find them. This is what it is. So this is how I kind of use my structure so that I'm able to navigate my way between the different tabs and applications. Sometimes we all end up with many applications, and that's how I divide it. Now, when it comes to building apps, as I mentioned, I prefer the horizontal split. Here it is on the right. What are my favorite things that I use right now? I have to say the functions, the global functions, which still, as of today, it's a private beta. I just love it. I'm showing one of the tutorials that I posted in YouTube and on the forum, which allows you to have a heat map where you can actually change the color of the heat map. Here you can see that I'm actually grouping the results of this cash flow table either by products or by company and by the year. So functions, definitely one of my favorite things that I've been using out lately. Other thing that I think it's must that I use is the transform results section of a query. And this particularly format data as array, I think I add it by default every time I write a query, regardless of how I'm going to use the data. So this is something I use 99% of times. And then the event handlers, of course, they're quite important, which I usually here would use a run script, but that's preference for each individual developer. But I like it to have everything in one script. What else? My favorite tools, to be honest, with LLMs, I have most of what I need, but one that I really, really like a lot is this page, tableconvert.com. And I like it when clients give me an Excel file and I need to just start playing around with it. So I will just copy some data. Let me just clear this. And I can really paste it and then transform whatever I need into JSON. And then I can either paste it as a data source for a table, or I can use it in a variable or anything. So I really, really like this because I can get an Excel sheet, put it into a JSON, and then put the JSON as a data source for a table and start playing around with it and see how it looks like, how I want to structure it, create a demo really quickly for a client, and so on. And I just thought of another tool that I use a lot is TeleTV. In fact, this video, I'm recording it using that. You can see I have 134 videos, and this I use to send to clients ideas, developments of what I've done, updates, tutorials, or videos. So this, I'm using it almost daily to showcase to clients and other people or friends what I'm doing. I love it. It's really intuitive. You can see here it has a Chrome extension over here, and I can just click, hit play, and it has a lot of functionality to trim your video, remove the words like etc., etc. So I really like this, and I use it a lot. And of course, I have always the Retool forum open in one tab. I like to read what other people are doing, what are they trying. I learn a lot from it, and I learn a lot from all of the developers that post things and ideas. So this is a tool that I'm constantly using. Really excited to be the first forum member to be invited to these Builder Talks. Looking forward to see you all and have a chat with Taylor. Cheers.
Thank you, Miguel, and welcome. Now that we've learned more about you and how you retool, let's learn even more about your work, your unique perspective as a fellow developer. Thank you so much for joining us today, and it's great to meet you again. It has been a while.
Thank you for having me, Taylor. It's a pleasure to be here. An honor.
Amazing. I love watching how anybody retools. If I could be the head over every developer's shoulder and really understand when they're in the flow and what makes them tick while they're in the flow, I just learn so much every single time I see that. So thank you for showing us. One thing that we didn't see in that video is how did you get started using Retool, developing on Retool? What introduced you to everything?
Yeah, so long story short, one of my clients, before entering into Retool, I helped clients with their tech stack, whether it was Salesforce, Asana, Monday, you name it. Just help them automate. One client had a very specific set of requirements, and after due diligence and discovery and research, the tool that met everything was Retool, which was a new discovery for me. And they accepted it, they funded it, and they said, well, you will have to implement it as well. I loved it when I started doing it. As everybody knows, the learning curve is a little bit steep. So the project that I say was going to take 3 months, it took like 8 to 9 months, but I hit my head against the wall many, many times at the beginning. But that's how I started. I just recommended it to a client, and then I started using it, and I thought this could solve a lot of things that other clients of mine are struggling with. So I started recommending it more and more and more. Yeah.
Love it. I love it. So I have a saying that there are many, different types of developers out there, especially in the enterprise space or the corporate space who are developing. And one of the types that I like to, talk about and identify with and wonder how do you make them passionate and make them into things are those who are developing under duress, where it's like they didn't ask for this tool set, they didn't ask for this platform, they didn't ask for this programming language, but here they are. And somehow they find some joy in it, even though they never really asked for it. So amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. You shared all kinds of tools and other things you kind of use in conjunction with your Retool development. But are there any software services or APIs that you particularly find to joy in integrating with Retool?
I think one I really enjoyed was Shopify's GraphQL integration. It was my first contact with Graph, and at the beginning, I was being used to classic relational databases. I was like, how does this work? What is it? It's this all these nodes and edges. I just don't understand them. But once I understood it and got it, it was, oh, this is so much better than the joins that I'm used to doing and other. And Shopify has done an incredible job and keeps doing it. So I really enjoyed it because then whenever the customer asks me, well, we need this data, we need that data. Sure, they have the endpoint. Let's just bring it in, and the mutations as well. So it just made it really easy to build a dashboard and tools for them to have to manage basically Shopify and all their inventory through Retool. And I loved it. It was really a joy to work with it. Yeah.
It's amazing. I love when you can use an API to just make the entire product and service better, the entire experience that you're having. The Shopify is an engine for a whole business, to be able
Yeah, it is.
to live. It's the breathing engine of a business. And so, to bring that into Retool and then commingle with data sources and things like that, it really makes things amazing.
It does. Yeah, it's incredible. A lot of businesses, I think, would benefit from something like that.
Yeah. Um, this is a little bit more of a sideways question, and we're going to get to some questions directly from the community in just a minute. But when you're working in Retool, do you listen to music or no? And if you do, what kind of music do you like to listen to?
It depends. I think my calendar is divided in blocks. So I have blocks of 2 hours throughout the day. And in advance, I think on Sundays I decide what I'll do in each block. And some weeks I know I have deep work that I just need to start from scratch. An application is a new application. Sometimes it's just debugging. When it's a new application, I like music. When it's debugging, it just distracts me. You need to be really focused. I don't get into the zone when I'm just debugging. So yeah, and also when I'm learning new things, I say, all right, this week I'm going to use this blog to learn this new language or whatever. That helps me as well. But to be honest, I have a 2-year-old daughter next to the room, and if I unplug completely, I may miss dramas that meet my assistants. So more and more, I'm kind of trying, not able to unplug completely from the real world while it's coding. I need to be 1 foot in the house and 1 foot in the computer. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely understand as a fellow father, and I can also understand dividing. I when you said you divide your time into 2-hour blocks, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why he might do that. And then, I think I now know the answer. In part,
Yeah, exactly. Families, it all centers around family. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thankfully 2-hour blocks are just about right to like time blocks certain types of tasks or perennial duties that you want to, take about an hour or two to like set up and go through and then finish off. So that's great. It must also make life very predictable for your customers and clients as you're building for them, when you know exactly what your days are looking like and how you figure out the trajectory of your 2-hour blocks. That's amazing.
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
right. We're going to go to our first question from the community. And this is from JG80. What is your favorite component that you find yourself having to use, and how would you improve it?
Repeat that question again. What is your favorite component that you?
Your favorite component, Retool component. I mean, you could, if a React component that doesn't work in Retool is your favorite, that's all right. But I mean, if you have a favorite Retool component, yeah, what do you use it for, and how does it hurt you too, and how would you fix it?
So I mean, my two favorites are, of course, the table and the list views. And if I had to go a little bit detail, I just the expandable rows in the tables, they're just client. I love them. Client level, you can do lots of things there. Yep. So that expandable row, I use it almost every time with clients when they need to show data. List views, I like them a lot. They kind of provide a different feeling than the tables. It's just it flows a little better. You can do a little bit. I like them. Although I feel that with large data sets, list views they just get too slow, and so I can kind of just keep them for smaller data sets. But if I can use them opposed to a table, I will opt for the list view because I think they have another feel to the table. But definitely those two are like table and the list views. I think they are the everything else just circles around that in retail.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, especially if you're building, actionable database, explorers and
Yeah,
dashboards and things
correct.
like that. They're absolutely
Correct. Yeah.
necessary.
Yeah.
I love those components too. I feel like sometimes my biggest frustration really is when I know with certainty that something I have will have only one row and will only ever have one row of the result. And I want to just do things one time. And like the amount of difficulty that you have to go through in order to like convince Retool that you really know what you're doing with a single piece of data is more difficult than it should be. But besides that,
Yeah,
yes, I
I know
agree.
the
I think
feeling. I know the feeling.
expandable rows though are the best because as soon as you start considering what your problem is and how to communicate even more information tucked inside of that expandable row is like that's where you really get to the point where you train a user how to expect to interact with the dashboard and what sort of things are going to happen if you start walking down the rabbit hole of a piece of data. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. We're going to go with a question from Ferret141. This is a career question. I like these ones. It's a two-parter. What projects have engaged you so much that you found yourself in a dark room and the sun had gone down at the time you snapped out of it? And we'll get to the second one after that one.
Yeah, so I have my own small SaaS platform. So some of my clients have been business coaches, and it's a small niche, and like I really admire what these people do. Um, and there are some platforms out there for business coaches, but for some reason, the people I knew didn't actually like them. So I built this. So it's a whole end-to-end platform where they can manage their leads, their client management, cash flow, inflow, finance. It's most of my client base is in Mexico. So there you have electronic invoices. So you need to actually get the stamp from the government for invoices that you issue. So that's integrated. And that for many, many months, because it was a side project, then I actually used it in the evenings or afternoons, and then realized it's midnight already. So that kind of, and I learned a lot of retool with the applications for that project because I just kind of start doing more and doing more and doing more applications for these clients. And but yeah, kind of that building that, and it was also a concept that is not completely what retool is for. Retool is for internal, it's kind of the initial is for internal operations, right? But then it has expanded a lot and now it has external users and all, but a year and a half ago, you would go to the forum and you would see people saying, well, yeah, that's not what really people is for. And people, how do I create a login for my users and so on? So kind of figure out all of these solutions and workarounds to achieve that feeling that it's a platform was really fun. So yeah, I would say that that has been one of my projects, yeah, that I've
It's
used
great.
Retool for. Yeah.
Is this a project that other people interested in running a business similar to yours can go and find and run their own kind of business on the same software?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So do you mean other people like me too?
Yeah, like anybody are there potentially other retool developers out there working on the same software
Oh
that
yeah.
you built for this purpose?
Well, I'm not sure for this kind of niche, but for this kind of like this, I would be surprised if there is. It's a very small niche.
Absolutely.
But the same concept would have a small SaaS platform, albeit on ritual. I'm sure there is. I know a couple, and I've seen it in people in the forum bouncing back ideas. So I'm sure there's people kind of building their own SaaS platforms all
Yeah.
in ritual. Yeah.
All right. Part two of Ferret 141's question. Looking back, what has been your biggest mistake in your technical career that you can laugh about now? Like, did you delete a main database? Did you fry some electronics?
So I think that nothing like there's nothing exciting or particular. Once, wrong attachment with a lot of sensitive information sent to the wrong thread of people, that yeah, it cost a lot. We had to take a lot of mitigation actions, and yeah, that was a breach. There was a breach of privacy and bad mistake there. And another one I can think of, I remember I'm sure many people have been there setting up a resource plan. We have a deadline, tight deadline. We need to set up a resource, connect to another platform, and I'm not able to connect to the resource. Everything seems to be there, everything's working, testing. I just can't find it. I spent 2, 3 days, and the solution was I was actually making a get call rather than a post call.
Oh, I've
So
done that.
3 days lost, and with a tight deadline. Yeah, it was when and the client asked me what was it? What was slowing us down? I was just say a small bit of code, nothing to worry about. Yeah,
Some, sometimes there's problems that you just need to sleep on before you really realize how simple or how, how far off you were.
yeah.
Definitely, my own journey as a manager has been, how long do you let, somebody who's just finding their way and like stumbling through something go through the entire self-discovery process of failing and like
Yeah.
being angry and having to sleep on it and then coming back the next day and just, oh, it was a dingbat thing, like
Yeah,
to me, like that
exactly.
journey that you go through is a core part of like getting better at all of this too. So like
It
I
is,
love
yeah.
standing back and letting people do a little bit of mistake finding and doing like that.
And you
Um,
won't make the same mistake again after three
no,
days of struggling. Yeah.
I'll make a different one that's even worse, I'm sure. Let's get kind of a deeper retool question. This is from James G31. With multi-page apps becoming the standard, how has your approach to app design changed? When do you decide something needs to be its own app versus a page in an existing app?
Good question. And I think I'm still figuring it out myself.
Yeah, me too.
I think so. Retool has always insisted in the documentation, in the posts from the forums, and wherever you see, keep your apps small, right? So they've always insisted in that, and I've always tried to stick to that. So I've always done that, and you know, before multi-page app, you would have your header or your sidebar with navigation, and yes, it's annoying that you will have to reload the whole thing, but I kind of divided it already into small chunks of it. So that hasn't changed because I'm all very used to that, and also because the moment you start making it bigger, clients start complaining that it start getting slower. So that kind of dividing into small chunks isn't something that hasn't changed, which is what multi-page apps is trying to do and help developers to do as well. I think so. I think it's still an evolution for Retool. I find it sometimes a challenge to know what components you put into the global aspects of your app, because then they have to communicate with all of the pages, and sometimes um, that's a trade-off because you know that you will have all your queries, and I think it depends on the functionality.
Yeah.
um, but right now I kind of stayed I'm doing practically the same thing that I've been doing. Although what it has been great is with global variables, knowing that I can just pass the values and change, but that has been a game changer because then I'm you can just keep state of what users have been doing in different pages. So if they're building a sales record or whatever, and they just want to go to something else, and then it persists. Whatever they were doing, it persists, and then they can open it somewhere else. So that has been great because then that the user workflow persist, and you can keep it persistent with the variable. And then when they just load it back, that variable communicates to the component. So I think that's something that I've changed a lot. I have my global variables for user input, so that I can just change from one page to the other, go back to see any information they needed to see, go back to where they were, and the inputs they were actually using persist. So that has been, I think, one of the things that have been a game changing for me with multi-page apps. But I'm still figuring out, for example, then how you do if you have one single app that requires multiple pages. And then so how do you communicate within one multi-page app and another multi-page app? So that kind of I haven't gotten there, and I have
Yeah.
one case that I still need to think about it. But yeah, I haven't gotten really to the thought of that. Yeah.
We should probably rabbit hole here for a little bit because this is interesting because it's not just multi-page. These are like different sort of design patterns that it ends up encouraging you to do. The global state being like a specific new kind of design pattern that you would lean on more now that you have multi-page, right? To me, the hardest part about retool variables, especially if you're using them for like a large state object of some kind, is the lack of strict typing. That like you can't just say, no, this variable will always hold to this schema. So it allows you to cheat
Right.
in all kinds of ways where you might not intend to have done. You maybe just set the global state to a single key value pair when all you really wanted to do was modify a single key, value pair within that state, right? So you have all kinds of like things where you then have to like be especially careful about when and where you do that, which is why I did hear you earlier mention that you've been using functions more and more lately instead of just JavaScript queries.
Right. Yeah.
You find yourself using functions more and more as part of the multi-page transition, or is that just something that's kind of naturally been happening at the same time?
That's a very good insight. So I've had it in my mind to start using it for exactly that, setting variables so that I know that I'm not making mistakes. Well, because every action that you take in tables or in components, you have to write them and you have to test them and check them that it work. And that's a really good idea that I haven't done, and I know that I could start moving towards using global functions for that, because it's just a very simple global function and you can just do it, and then you know that your variables will have
That
information
you've
that you want.
encapsulated all of, yeah, exactly. You still have
Yeah.
to think it all up, but at least you know that you've written this thing that like takes care of the business for you.
Yeah, I haven't used it, but I definitely should, and I have had that idea as well. Yeah.
Great. All right. Thank you for rabbit holing there with me for a little bit. Let's keep going with Deep Retool for a little bit. This is from, oh, not going to say the name correctly, Bihavik at Whittle Studio.
Yeah.
When building complex retool apps with large data sets or multiple external API integrations, what strategies do you use to optimize performance, ensure smooth, responsive user experiences? Don't just say multi-page. Particularly interested in your approach to handling rate limits, caching, minimizing latency.
Wow.
This is a deep question. And
Yeah,
I don't
it is.
know, but let's try.
And I'm sure the guys from Whittle Studio would have solutions, more smarter solutions than the ones that I implement. But I think it all depends on, for me at least, I always ask what the user needs, right? It's very rare that a user needs all of the data right away. And if it does, it's more like they actually need a dashboard, they need a report, they need graphs and charts. So for me, it's very rare when like table with more than yeah, I think that's one of the first questions, right? What is the data for? What do the user needs? Do they really need all the information? If they do, that's one, and that's all right. Then how then we can load it? And that's actually, well, then to avoid latency, then we can actually just make the different runs and then just start batching them and putting them in there. If it's a big data set and the user knows it's a big data set and they're willing to wait 10 seconds until that happens and loads, right? If it's huge and they're managing, I don't know what. If it isn't, then it's a simple of, all right, you have some default filters that are already there, and your data set, your query is already kind of using them as default, whether that's a year, whether that's a user, whether that's most recent or whatever. So you try to reduce it from page load to a set of given default filters that you know that the user will kind of go there immediately. And you can make these filters dynamic based on the user. So every user then can go and have a different set of filters so that the data that it loads is the most appropriate data for that specific user that is
Yep.
searching for, right? So I think that is when I have a big set of data, is all right, what data do you want to see right away because of the actions that you want to take in this page? Because I don't believe that you need to take actions with all of this, or you need everything to take the actions. So when you want this page, what is the action that you really want to take? And based on that, create some filters or some flow for the user to actually just select what kind of data he or she wants to see, and based on that, then kind of take actions. But that will be my approach. And to be honest, I haven't had experience with such large data sets that I need to really deal with caching or latency. So I'm not able to provide a big help here. I think most of the data sets are most of maybe max is 20, 25,000 rows, and I'm able to filter them quite easily. So yeah, that will be my answer.
Great. Um, Thank you for that. I was thinking through what you were saying and wondering, kind of in a side question to that, is how do you make a decision when you're building an app when to kick off a workflow to
Mm,
obtain, filter, transform,
yeah.
or bring data into the app? And then when you do decide to do that, how do you keep things straight where you know that this workflow and this app and this database, all three like form a holy trinity of things that are like one project and not just, you know,
Yeah.
random stuff in your retool instance?
Yeah. So I think I asked myself, how many queries will I need to build in the app to obtain the data? So if first of all, I will have to query from one data source and then from another data source, and then I will have to manipulate it. So that's three and four. I think for me, if it's more three or more, I need a workflow.
Yeah.
Because also because workflows are wonderful for debugging. I just love how you have all the history there. So whenever the users, I just didn't get this, or I just throw an error, it's just wonderful that you can just go there and see the date and all the history of each block and just see what happened. That is something that an app doesn't give you. And you could go to the audit logs, but so I think for me, that's kind of the rule of thumb. Do I need more than three queries for something like that? Yes. Then I just put in a workflow for that, because then it will help me debug. It will make my app cleaner, and then I will be able maybe to recycle it somewhere else, because I know that I may be able to recycle it somewhere else. So I think that is my rule of thumb.
I agree completely. Commenting and documentation within a workflow too is like a huge
Oh
part of its
yeah,
advantage
absolutely.
too.
Yeah,
Like the
absolutely.
ability to just say, this is what this part is doing, and this part is doing this
Yeah.
part. And then your ability to just interject something in the middle when like your business logic needs to change or something. It's all of that is super, super valuable stuff.
Yeah, I
I wish
agree.
that the self-documenting feature was like valuable throughout all of the retool
The
product and
application.
where it
Yeah, I wish that
was
too.
great. I'm going to go to a kind of different type of question again. We'll back our way back out of deep retool. We're going to talk about your agency's sort of stuff. And what is the most common type of tool, other than dashboards, that your clients ask you to build? And what is the most appreciated tool you've really built where you felt like, man, I really hit this one out of the park?
Yeah. I think so. I've stayed away from enterprise clients just because I don't think all of the structural part, I don't think I'm ready for that yet. So I have small and medium companies, clients that I can use, and their needs are they just need to run their business and be quicker, right? They just need to reduce the number of actions they take because they may have 10 to 15 employees, and that's very limited human capital, right? So they want to make the most out of their time and take time away from them. So the most classic one is let's convert an Excel spreadsheet that is becoming a mess into something that is more structural, put it into a database, and actually correlate that with other pieces of information in other platforms, right? So that is kind of the typical, and I actually something that I don't do, kind of the opposite of the question is I don't do integrations with between Retool and Google Sheets. I know
You
there's
don't.
integration there, but I just always recommend against unless there is a very kind of that because as look, Ritual has everything you need to
Yeah.
replace your Google Sheets. Why would you want to integrate two tools that basically do the same? Um, so kind of, but there are cases I know, but I rarely recommend and go through that.
You don't want to
That is
let your
just
clients cheat. That's really what it is. You know it's a slippery slope really quickly before the Google Sheet then becomes the source of truth once more, and people
yeah,
drop.
correct. And then the Google sheet, they can you can make mistakes. People can just get and they start creating. So it's not that, and yeah, you have the Google history. Anyway, that's a whole other topic about Google
This
Sheets,
is
right?
why we hire
But
Miguel.
yeah. So I do that a lot. Something that I really like, and I thought it was a very basic project, but it has been super beneficial for this small SaaS platform that I have. All of these personality tests that you do when you do go to a business coach and or even teams do. So how you communicate, how you take actions, how you take so they had these personality tests all made in Excel. So they sent that to the clients. The client had to respond to that, and the client sent it back. They had to verify if all the responses were made correctly because they could maybe type from 0 to 5 and someone typed 6, so they would have to send it back. It was just awful. I couldn't believe
Yeah.
the system that they were using. So we just did some, we put it there, we create the whole mechanism, we create the reports for them uh, and that has saved them hours and hours and hours of time because they just create a link. It's a public app, and you send it to someone. The user puts email address, name. They can go back there to finish the test whenever they need it. Whenever they complete it, the user Ritual will get an email. The report is ready, and they will have a consolidated report of everyone. So they're basically because they're business coaches and they're coaching their executive teams, but they're telling how big is your team? Well, our team is 100 people. We can do the test for all of your 100 people. And they just have to generate a link and they will send it to the whole employees and everyone will fill it and they don't have to do a thing. So that has been super beneficial and it's one of the few public apps that I have. I haven't had any use case or many use cases for public apps, and this has been a great use case. And they just keep using it. And I don't know how many hundreds of tests they have, or thousands of tests they have done in the past months. So that has been great. It was very simple. I'm very surprised because it's a very simple app that has
Yeah,
brought massive change and benefit.
that's amazing. Did you take one of these personality tests yourself and evaluate yourself,
Uh,
your own tool?
yeah, I have done. I mean, we all have to. We've done so many of these,
I'm
especially
an
when you become
Obi-Wan
a
Kenobi.
manager. Especially
Uh-huh.
when you become a manager, which I was one, and then you have to do the conversation with all your people. Oh yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you. That I think went places I wasn't expecting, so that was great. We're gonna go to a live question. Somebody who's watching this right now is named Dan Gagliardi. Sorry if I mangled that. Miguel, have you ever integrated something that facilitates the display of a database on Retool Mobile?
Oh,
Thank you, Dan.
um, no, I haven't done a lot of retail mobile, to be honest. I've just done two apps and they didn't really work out. I think for me, the frustration of the Retool mobile is that you need to download the Retool app unless you're an enterprise, and clients simply don't like that.
Yeah.
Um, and the two that I built, anyway, there were issues, so I haven't built a lot in Retool mobile yet. I want to, but I haven't. So the answer is no, I haven't.
Well, thank you. I haven't spent much time with Retool Mobile either. There is still, I mean, this many months in, still so many things I have not yet to like really, really touch. I'll twist the question just a little bit. Or there's a follow-up. Just one second.
Data table, not
A
data.
data table, not a database.
Um, no, I think one was a tool, an app for recording a conversation, and another used list views, or the repeatables that the mobile has. So no, data table. Sorry, Dan, but still the answer is no.
In the realm of what do you use that part of Retool for? What do you use Retool Query Builder for? I'm still trying to figure. I mean, like I know how to use it in a way where I'm like interacting with it, and you know I'm picking a resource, I'm querying it, and then maybe I'm saving it for later. But like in your constellation of things that you do for Retool when you're building things, do you use Query Builder for something specifically, and when do you reach for it?
That the one with for the in the library. Um,
Yes.
to be honest, no, I don't use it. I may be embarrassed by saying this. Maybe I should, but no. That's something that I remember initially creating the libraries and queries, and that may be a big gap in my retool in how I
Yeah.
retool.
Maybe it'll
But
change.
I
Maybe there'll
don't.
be new reasons to use it that didn't arrive
Absolutely,
before.
I should definitely look into that. But the honest answer is no, I don't use it.
Yeah, I'm really excited with all the possibilities that are in the future. That we'll segue over to AI in just a second, but like that query library and builder and things, you know, if you're starting to consider each and every one of those queries as a discrete, you know, function almost in itself, and then you're, you know, just asking workflows to go to town, examining your functions and choosing the right ones to do the next thing,
Mm.
like that's when a library of queries that you've carefully like worded and added some metadata about and things might be pretty interesting.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm gonna look into that definitely.
So Caleb asks, sometimes I feel stuck when designing elements and dashboards. How do you overcome creative blocks to build the end goal, starting with a mental idea of what something should look like? How do you find it's the best way to tackle complex problems? It's a packed question, but I think you got the gist.
Yeah. So you mentioned this during our conversation, Taylor. Sleep over it. I think that's how I often get unblocked.
Yeah.
Although sometimes for me, it means don't sleep over it because I'm at bed just with
Let's
my
keep
eyes
it
wide
going.
open, just thinking about it and just wanted to go to sleep. That's one I really found the best way to unblock is just put it aside for one day if the deadline allows it, work on something else 1 or 2 days, and then come back to it, and it really helps. Second, there just go depending on the use case and the clients. I go and find similar software that
Yeah.
do that thing and see how they do it. Um, just to get some ideas and compare and see what they have that I could have. I think we're rarely reinventing the wheel with ritual. So somebody has done it before. So I just go and look at it and how somebody else is doing it or does it, and that also helps to unblock and say, oh yeah, yeah. I think the problem with getting started is that we, at least in my case, you go into building an app and you usually have an idea of what the end state should be. And that is a problem because then it could actually be 20, 30, 40 different ways of how the end state could be, but you're stuck in that idea. And sometimes it's not easy to restart the whole app because there's a lot of things there. But just take a step back, look at other options, and really question yourself. And for me, it's like I'm new to app development. I've been here for 2 years. I'm sure there's a lot of people that have some different and cool stuff. What can I learn from someone else? And I think that approach, mindset, helps really to get unstuck and not just keep with the same idea. And also, I think sometimes, and I've noticed it in myself, if there's always talk about it with either depending on the situation, the project leader, the client, someone else, because
You're in
then
better words again.
yeah, because then that really, when you start even talking about it to someone, then even saying it out loud, you're saying, "Oh, but this doesn't make sense," and then people will say, "But what is this for? And why you shouldn't?" And that also helps a lot. I found myself in situations when the client gave me a brief, I work in it for 2 weeks, and then I get stuck, and the client said, "Oh, but I don't need this. It was just I was just mentioning it as a side."
Just check that out. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh, you can remove that." And I was like, "Oh, all right."
You
So
know,
yeah, talking about it a lot helps.
as a segue to my next question, this kind of connects. Maybe with LLMs becoming more and more prominent, with people knowing more and more how to craft a prompt that is likely to get you the outcome that you are actually looking
Mhm.
for, maybe the next step up is that when you're doing client intake or when you're doing intake for another software project, you say, treat me like the LLM. What would you ask the LLM to do? Like, write out the bullets of the sort of interaction you want to have with
Yeah,
the software and what it does and what it should say. And then I'll take that and I will, find my way through the app
absolutely,
building and what, you're asking for. Um,
absolutely, absolutely. Or we
sometimes
just
it,
have our own
yeah.
LLM, and I'll just send it to the client. Please just let the LLM.
Yes. Well, I mean, we're in a weird future now where like what happens on your command line is between you and your command line, really. When you're building software at this point, where that code comes from, it might be coming out of your brain, it might be coming out of the hive mind. You never, it's not really for you. It's for you that if you commit it, you agree with it. You are committed to it, in a way where like that is now your code and you own it from that point on. But
Yeah.
at the same time, it almost doesn't matter how it found its way there. That's been true of the internet though since the days of Perl and PHP. Everything that you find out there is running on copy and pasted code in some way. So, segue. How has AI changed the way that you work? And are your customers asking you to integrate AI directly into project work that you're doing for them now?
Yeah. So firstly, AI is what has enabled me to run my business. I'm not a developer by background. I actually studied law. I have a profession in strategic operations. And the first time I started using Retool, I kind of said, "Oh, JavaScript. I know what it is, but I've never done it. Let's just go to
Mhm.
Retool to ChatGPT and start getting some." And with time, I've used ChatGPT as my own professor or teacher to go and, all right, you wrote this, just teach me. What does it mean? What is it? This function, and which I think is one of the best ways to learn coding, if for someone who is approaching it. So that has allowed me to have a developer full time, for example, me who I'm not a developer. That's kind of one thing. The other thing is use cases. I mean, if those of us who are into the whole conversation on AI, we know that this year is the very year where use cases will appear with AI agents. And before it has been kind of anecdotal for people for the ChatGPTs. But so far, yes, the solutions that we've implemented is kind of text extract image and get invoice information and put it there. That's great. That has been amazing for many, many customers that I can just put there and extract the information. I think so many companies have implemented that. Um, Summaries of documents or summaries of data, I think has been the most common, and people love it because then they will just fit it there and they will get a summary of the data and then just take a decision based on that, which of course, then you have to actually then make sure that the summary is accurate and there's a lot of caveats there and so on, right? So there has been some requests of this style, but they're kind of appendices to the actual main application, right? They're
Yep.
never the main application.
Yep.
But I mean, we have 10 minutes left, but I know what's coming on in May 20th, with rituals and future applications. It's gonna be great because you are now, like, I'm thinking, for example, really assistants as AI assistants for specific roles, like a CFO needs an assistant, and you can connect it to everything that a CFO needs and take action. Not only provide data, but take action, send reminders to people, update a, for example, a project management portfolio director. You plug
Yep.
in all the projects. So those use cases are actually now becoming fat, that the AI agent is going to be able to kind of assist these people, and it's going to be really cool. And I really want to build that in Retool.
The hardest part though is how are you going to describe it? How are you going to learn to describe it? How are you going to, like, all these aspects of where we're going with this stuff, to actually like know what you want well enough to describe it, then to also get it back to you is like really, really tough. As a, I am kind of from a more of a developer background myself, and even though I'm a creative writing sort of major kind of guy in college and stuff, but
Your background kind of gives you away.
yeah, but to me, some of the most exciting stuff is stuff that we haven't seen yet, and just even APIs. We talked a little bit about pagination before, and paginating responses and calls, but I imagine if every API had some sort of AI interface to it a little bit, that you could even ask it like, is the data I'm looking for even at the end of this paginated set? Do I even need to grab the whole set? Like, all kinds of meta information about the things that we're, interacting with, the data that we're pulling, the transformations we're trying to make, both in the real world and in just the digital world. Like, there are all kinds of new little hints that can be added into everything, whether I as a programmer uses those hints, or a future kind of agentic workflow sort of situation, which could read those hints and make decisions and make canceled decisions and all kinds of things. It's a very interesting way of looking at things, and all the specifications and things that are going to come around to describe these things, not just MCP, but other things. Like, I'm really excited about all those possibilities for sure. So I know we're starting to wind down. We got 7 minutes or so. I think we definitely have a few more questions times, but let's just not babble about AI forever. We'll find a way to pull it back in here again. I'm going to kind of go back a little bit to, a question that maybe sits a little bit in your land of working in management, leadership scenarios and things. How do you think emotional intelligence plays a role in building effective workflows and internal tools in Retool? How do you see your own emotional intelligence making you a better provider for your customers and clients?
That's a really good question. Which assumes I have a high level of emotional intelligence, which is not a given. But I think what it gives me is knowledge and expertise, having been in leadership positions of what a business need, what a business leader actually, the pressures that they're feeling and what they really want to achieve, which is ultimately goes to the bottom line. That's what business owners are looking at, right? And you know that because you know that there's salaries to pay, there's payroll, there's families in the background, and you've seen that. And I think you need to deal with all of that when someone wants something, because you know that that's kind of what it's bad, really, really bad is driving them as business owners. They want to get this because the bottom line is what needs to actually get greener and greener. So how has it helped me? I think always acknowledging that and reminding people, all right, if we're stuck or we're building an app, just what is the end goal of this app, right? Why are we going to spend hours and hours and you're going to start paying me hours to build that? what is the end goal that you want to achieve, and is it actually worth it? It's actually going to achieve the goal, because sometimes you see the shiny thing and people go behind the shiny thing. And I'm sure you've seen more than I do, how many projects are built and then the ROI is simply not there. It's just a shiny thing and there's no ROI, right? So, and then it just gets duplicated or it's not used and it's a project as well. So taking a step back and see, all right, this is what you want to drive in your business. This is what you have all around, all these people, and your goal. Let's talk about it and actually define before starting anything, will this application actually achieve you to help you achieve that? Maybe it's not the same, maybe it's not in that tone, the conversation, but the gist of it will be that. Will you get that through this application or no? I think that's how it helps me. Yeah.
I completely agree. I think, to your point, having emotional intelligence also is emotional curiosity a little bit too. And so many businesses, when even if they're looking at the bottom line, they're wanting it to still be theirs. And like that's really where it's at the most, is that by being there and being like willing to kind of role play and be part of their business even temporarily, you're more likely to get them closer to their outcomes, because you're going to use the same words, the same emotional universe that they live in, the same pressures, same worries, and you're going to put that right into the software in a way that a Google spreadsheet will never express. You know, that core thing about the business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Miguel, we are just about running out of time here, and this has been, I mean, pretty amazing. It's gone more smoothly than I could have possibly imagined. So thank you so much for all of the time today. We have one more question, and it's an important one. Where can people find you on the internet or learn more about your businesses and services?
Yeah, my website, you mentioned at the beginning, buildreallyfast.com. That's my agency website. And then I have my calendar. People can just book in a slot to have a conversation, no strings attached. I don't have a lot of slots, but there's some slots there. buildreallyfast.com. Thanks, Taylor.
Well, thank you again so much, Miguel. I'm going to pass it back to Sarah Sherman now, our
Appreciate
head of community, to wrap things up. Here you go, Sarah.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah. That is a wrap on our very first Builder Talks. Huge thank you to Miguel and to Taylor for sharing their time and their deep insights. I know I learned a lot. I hope everyone else here also did. Thank you to Daniel as well, who's behind the scenes, making sure everything ran smoothly. As Taylor said, I think it ran very smoothly, so kudos to you. And thank you to everyone here for showing up and being a part of it from the very start. We hope you took something away from today, maybe a new idea, a little bit of inspiration, or just a reminder that you're not building alone. As a small thank you for being here today, if you asked a question or if you reacted in the thread, we'll actually be sending something your way. So make sure you have a community account and keep an eye on your inbox. And if you have any follow-up questions for Miguel or for Taylor and you want to join the conversation, just post here in the thread down below in the community. Miguel will try to get to them in the next few days and we'll be in there monitoring them. And also, if you're not a part of the Retool community yet, this is your sign. It's where builders like you connect, come together, share ideas, ask questions, and help each other level up. We would really love to have you in there. So we're learning as we go, and your input really helps. If you have thoughts on how to make the next one even better, we would love to hear them. So we'll be sending out a survey post-event, and please share your thoughts and any feedback you might have to make these events even better for you. Once again, thank you so much for being here and for building something special with us. We're really just getting started. All right.
Thank you, Sarah.
you.